We tend to think of social media censorship in terms of domestic politics. Case in point, Donald Trump getting the boot after rejecting the election results and inciting the attack on the Capitol. But a new controversy centered on India is a reminder that it's a huge issue worldwide with incredibly high stakes. Adam Riley has more. But first, a warning, some of the images you're about to see are troubling.
As COVID rampages across India, the scenes of suffering coming out of that country are horrific.
There's no room for these people in Delhi's emergency wards. Relatives are left to cope with severely ill patients by themselves.
Literally just going from place to place in the city, begging, pleading for any help that comes forward.
An assembly line of death and misery on an insurmountable scale.
It's a public health nightmare and a huge political crisis for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose handling of the pandemic is being sharply criticized.
This could have so easily been avoided if experts had been listened to, if planning had been put in place.
But now Modi is getting a boost from Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, which have agreed to block about 100 posts critical of his COVID response. His government claims the posts were misleading, but their real crime may have been making Modi look bad. Earlier this year, Twitter did something similar during the so-called farmers' protests.
Twitter has said that it has now suspended more than 500 accounts.
India has threatened to jail Twitter and Facebook employees if these requests aren't met, and both companies want access to a huge emerging commercial market. But as India's COVID death toll mounts, muffling the outcry feels perilously close to complicity.
So, Dan Kennedy, this seems on a very minor scale, unless it's not at all. I mean, forcing employees to take down 100 posts when we're talking about a country with 1 billion people, I mean, are they understating that? And are they understating other things, like maybe the death toll? I mean, what is this really about? We know that Modi doesn't want criticism, but going after 100 posts, that doesn't seem like much.
Well, we know that the death toll has been undercounted. The New York Times reported the other day that it's been undercounted by a factor of somewhere between 2 and 5. I'm not sure that we really have a handle on how many of the social media posts have been taken down. But I want to say something that may prove a little unpopular with the other panelists, but that is, I'm hardly a defender of these big technology countries, but if they're going to do business in other countries, they have to abide by the laws and rules that are in place in those countries. India is the world's largest democracy by far, but it has become increasingly less democratic in recent years. And it's pretty authoritarian now. And we can't expect that Twitter and Facebook and Instagram are going to go into India and essentially impose the U.S. First Amendment on another country. It just doesn't work that way.
So my mother's from India and I have extended family there. So from that point of view, I'm extremely glad, even though it's horrifying to see the images that are coming out in the news from that country. That said, I think it's important to remember that Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat are not the press. They're social media and they're subject to different rules there. And also this is, as Dan said, a business decision. This isn't really about suppressing information as much as it's about keeping avenues open for business deals in the future. That said, do I think it benefits the public to have even 100 posts suppressed? Not really, but without knowing how they claim to be misleading or full of misinformation, it's hard to know whether this was really about image or really about misinformation.
You guys are going easy.
Well, I'm looking at this from a little different point of view, which is it just kind of goes to show how much journalism, how folks get their news has changed so much, and the power that social media has now, even over conventional media, right? So we're talking about the situation in India now. Well, obviously it was as Emily mentioned with President Trump. I think it just really shows how much we've come and how much we've changed in terms of the shift of power in terms of media outlets. And in this particular case, obviously social media is playing a role around the world. And to me, I do disagree a little with you. I think that the more opinions, the more platforms are out there reporting news from all different angles, is actually a good thing on a local as well as an international scale.
Agree with that. Less is more is better than less information. But to me, this is all about India and it's all about Modi. He's a demagogue. He's been that way for a while. He wrote the playbook for Donald Trump, and he will press every lever of power he can to suppress information in his country. As far as the tweets coming down and the other posts being blocked or taken down, to me, that's all about Modi as well. He will press all the levers of power to maintain control under what they call the Informational Technology Act in India, and suppressing information that, quote, protects the sovereignty and integrity of India and maintains public order. To me, that's what this is all about. And it's also, as Dan said, a business decision. They have to abide by the laws of the country if they want to do business there. One other thing I'll say about this, and we haven't really noted this, is the number of journalists who have died from COVID in India. It's a massive tragedy. It's not only in India. Brazil has had more than 200 journalists die in the past year from COVID. In both these countries, they're covering the pandemic. They're coming in contact with people, and they are dying from COVID-19. And that's something that's getting a little bit overlooked.
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point, Mike. I mean, Dan, you're defending one of the largest democracies in the world, but are they really? And if they're suppressing free speech, how free are they?
Well, they have become, as I said, they become increasingly less democratic in recent years under Prime Minister Modi, unfortunately. And they're moving very much in an authoritarian direction. I don't think this would have happened 10 years ago under previous governments, but this is what Modi wants. And unfortunately, U.S. companies who want to do business there have to abide by it.